to welcome, to this webinar. This is one of the most popular one, and I believe it's because people like it a lot. So in this webinar, this called You Want a Contract, because of course we all want to be government contractors. We all want to win contracts. The question is, after you win, then what will happen? And that is exactly what we are going to take you into this journey in here. We're going to go all the way from the very beginning when you are analyzing, should I bid, no bid? What do I need to take into account when I bid? What is going to happen? And then what to expect, okay, at the different places or different stages of the business. Okay, in general, as you can see in here, we are going right now through the overview, as I mentioned. Then this webinar is divided in three sections, as Yasmin mentioned. Understanding a government contract is very, very important that you understand what a government contract is and how. It's very, very different than a private sector contract, okay, or a commercial contract. The part two is that, okay, so you want now managing the contract execution, the scope of work or SOW. What do you need to take into account related to clearance, badges, hiring employees, subcontracting employees, and different reporting. And then the part three, which is the contract financing, understanding the values and funding and accounting and why it's important to have a good accounting system. And then the conclusions at the end, okay, what is the value of a lot of these good practices that you are going to be seeing in here? Okay, so with this knowledge and understanding, let's just start. Part one, actions prior to award. I always, when people tell me, yeah, I wanted to bid into this contract, I always tell them, did you read the RFP? RFP stands for the request for proposal, issued normally by the government. Whether you are going to be the prime contractor, i.e., that you are going to be directly in contract with the government, or you're going to be a subcontractor, whether you are going to be then hired by a company that is going to be the prime and you're going to be just a sub to them. My recommendation is always make sure that you read in clear and understand the RFP, because that is going to be what is going to be used to measure what you are doing and to understand everything that you need to do and how you are going to be doing. During these sessions, I also going to let you know a lot of the items, like I said, people say I usually get this question from a lot of people, how this relate to my contract. I only pay attention to the scope of work because this is what you are being hired because of what you need to do. The other things were just gibberish. And gibberish because 99% of the people do not understand that the government, the US federal government, needs to make sure that they are leveling the playing field. And by leveling the playing field means that they are playing fair to all the ones who are going to be bidding and to all the ones who are going to be performing, including your company, whether you are the prime or a sub. And that's why I always tell them, did you read the entire SOW? And to all these gibberish. And if you don't understand it, guys, that's why you have the PTAC in there, okay? Whether it's Maryland or any other, but I have to tell you, they are a great source of information, a great source of education. And like she says, in most of the cases, it is absolutely free and they provide excellent, excellent advice. Even I, for my company, GL Solutions, I have used the PTAC also, just to let you know. So, so that, should know that if you have any questions, if you have any issue, go to them first before you go to any other person or anybody else that you may be asking in there. I always tell them, pay attention during this RFP to something called the Section K. It's called, it's called representations from the offeror. If you are claiming that you are in a small business, that's the part that you need to understand, and what are the conditions to say that you are in a small business at that moment, and to make sure that you are compliant with all the items. A lot of them are very complicated. Some of you may or may not know something that we call for short the FAR. The FAR stands for the Federal Acquisitions Regulation. It's a very thick book if you buy it in paper. I always recommend don't buy it, download it for free. Don't let anybody tell you that you need to pay. It is absolutely for free. And you can always download the latest version at acquisition.gov, G-O-V. Okay, and you can see in there, and all the federal acquisitions regulations are listed in there. Pay strong attention to what we call the 52s under the FAR regulations, and you're going to see a lot of clauses incorporated by references. And this is that you may want to make sure that you understand, okay, and even that your RFP might be 80 pages. If this is the first time that you are bidding into an RFP for the federal government as a prime or as a sub, take your time, read and understand the federal acquisitions regulations in this case, okay? That it is very, very, very important, because that is what is going to dictate. Many people say, oh yeah, my contract is only like 10 pages. Yeah, but I see like 20 different clauses incorporated by reference. So I gave them the FAR and I tell them, this is actually your contract. Read it, because all these items relate to you. Can you negotiate? You can negotiate the FAR to be in or out, but most of the time it's very difficult to have it because that is imposed to everybody. And you cannot negotiate, no matter how many attorneys you hire, okay, how you are going to reinterpret the FAR or how you're going to negotiate the write-up of those FARs. That is not possible, which is usually possible in a commercial contract, but not in the federal government contract in this case. So that's part of what you need to do, okay? And that's part of what you may want to make sure that you have, okay? And again, pay strong attention. People refer to me, oh, this is just gibberish. No, it's not gibberish. It's something that you really, really need to take into account, especially if you are claiming your status as a small business. There are certain regulations in there that you need to take a strong attention, because they are pertaining to your decisions to claim that you are in a small business. And based on that, you need to make sure that you are then seen by the government as a small business. This is a section of the Form SF-33, which is usually at the top, at the first page. This is an actual one, okay, from the EPA. And they have to give you all this information, and all solicitations, regardless of the agency, are usually distributed and divided in this format. The description, the section, solicitation, contract, description of the work statement is always your part C. Packaging and marking sections, acceptance, okay. And then the section K, as I mentioned, representation and certifications of order by the offeror. Section L, very important, because that's when they give you the instructions of what you need to do to respond to this contract. Okay, and you're going to find all these items directly in each one of these sections. Notice that this is almost like also a menu of items, and it's telling you on which pages you're going to find. And also section M, which is the evaluation factor for award. They need to tell you how they are going to be awarding this and what factors they're going to be using for evaluation. Okay, and make sure that you read all this stuff in a lot of details. I have seen many people win contracts and then not being able to perform because they miss certain sections in some other items related to, oh, I didn't know that I was supposed to do this or that, okay, as part of the contract. Once you win, if you cannot perform, it's going to be a pretty bad thing into your company. Because every contract, and we're going to see that later on, at the end of each clean, and this is a concept that I'm going to be introducing, the clean stands for the contract line item number. The contracting officer is supposed to issue what is called a CPARS, or contractor performance ratings, okay, that it is to tell you how good or how bad you did. That is publicly available for any contracting for any contracting offices within the US federal government. It's not that everybody can see the CPARs, but anybody in the federal that is in the contracting shop within the federal government will have access to your CPARs. And you want those CPARs that they say, hey, I hired company X, what are the CPARs in here? You want them to say that they are great. As part of the good news too, just to let you know, even if you are a shop, the Small Business Administration is now requiring and mandating that the prime includes the performance of the subcontractors in the contract too. It used to be that it was optional, but now it is really necessary and mandated that they are in there, and you must demand this. If you are the shop and you know that they are going to be issuing the CPARs, ask your prime. I would like to see it because I like to see what do they say about my company. Because you are building this, and this is the past performances issues that they're going to be controlling and dealing in this case in here. Moving right along, okay, actions prior to the award. As I say again, did you read the entire RFP? What was on it? Okay, reading and understanding, you want to make sure that you know what type of a contract they are going to be giving you. In general, there are three types of contracts. There is one that is called full fixed price or fixed price, as most people understand it. Okay, then there is the T&M, time and material, and then there is the cost plus fixed fee. The issue in there is who is taking the risk. In the full fixed price, in the FFP, your company is taking the full risk, financial risk and performance risk for the company. That is, that is extremely important because you need to understand how are you bidding, what are your budgets, to understand if something comes up that you were not planning, that you can overcome it and do it. In the time and material type of a contract, you come out with an agreed price per hour, and then you bill based on the level of efforts that each labor category and each person working there is going to be putting, at that moment. So the risk is shared between the federal government and your company in that case. In the cost plus type of a contract, the government is taking the full risk, not the performance risk, but the full financial risk. Okay, and because they are agreeing to reimburse you for all your direct and all of your indirect contract costs. Take into account that this is all regulated, as I mentioned, by the FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation. When you are in a small business, you are not going to be measured in the exact same way as you are measured in a big business, but the cost accounting that is going to regulate, and we're going to see that later, your cost is called the FAR 31. So you need to become extremely familiar as in a small business what is called the FAR 31. Take also into account that in addition to the Federal Acquisitions Regulation of FAR, each agency may have their own acquisition regulations. For example, if you are bidding on a Department of Defense, whether any agency, Navy, Army, Air Force, etc., if you start with a D, you need to be familiar with what is called the DFAR, or Defense Federal Acquisitions Regulation, and they are going to be listening to you. They all start with a 2 and then a number. Don't worry, you don't need to pay to get the access. They are all free. And in the same acquisition.gov, you can download them all for free. And I want to make sure, because I have purpose, oh yeah, they're asking me to pay $100. You might not be in the right location, in the right place. It is all free. Take also into account that all acquisitions regulation, whether it's defense or whether it's the FAR, or whether it's the agency, they were written by attorneys. You may not need an attorney to interpret them, but take into account that they are written by attorneys. And there are many people that can help you manage and understand and interpret the FAR correctly without having to pay $1,000 an hour to an attorney to do that. So, and by the way, the PTAC is a great resource place to get that information. So when you are looking at that, okay, make sure that you don't make the same mistake. And I see many people doing it, and they say, yeah, I don't care about the gibberish. I am a subcontractor, therefore that does not apply to me. Everything, and I mean everything that applies to the prime applies to any subcontract. So many people say compliance, what? What it is a compliance? A compliance is the items that you need to make sure that you make sure that they are doing it. For example, if you are in a small business, the agency and everybody is expecting that the people doing these contracts are going to be mostly employees of your company. Not consultants, not subcontractors, but employees of your own company. What does it mean to be an employee? That they are under a W-2. And that's part of the compliance that you need to take into account. As again, this is a fixed price, or this is a T&M, or this is a cost plus. There are certain FAR regulations that if you are too small, and you have received less than $750,000 in revenue cost, you may not qualify for the cost plus contract, because cost plus contracts, well, they are great. It's the best type of a contract to have, honestly, because the government is covering all your costs. It requires a special accounting system, which is a little bit more expensive. And that's why you see many people trying not to get into a cost plus type of a contract. Pay attention to the billing and reporting information that you need to have. Okay, there is something in every proposal. You're going to see it as part of the scope of work. It's called the CDRL, the contracting deliverable right lines. Okay, that you need to make sure that you are doing it, and make sure that you are performing at the level that they are asking you. Sometimes they say, oh, you need to submit all this reporting, and they accepted it at the 98%, which means almost perfect. And yes, you have to deliver at the 98%. Delivering to less than 98% means that your billings may not get approved. Okay. Also, you need to understand, very, very important, the CLEAN concept. CLEAN stands for contract line item number. If you look at every RFP, they go by CLEAN 0001, CLEAN 0002, etc. And they are divided. Most of the CLEANs are usually 1 year or less, but you need to know and understand those CLEAN levels, because that's what you're going to be delivering, and you're going to be billing against those CLEAN levels, and you need to tell the government how much have you done. If you, let's say, if you receive a contract that is a $1.2 million and CLEAN 001 is the full $1.2 million, if it is a fixed price, maybe you're going to be billing $100,000 a month. 100,000 times the 12 month, give you the full $1.2 million in there. So that's why it's making sure and understand that you are going to be set up to the exact same gibberish and to the exact same threshold that the prime contractor, even if you are a subcontractor, it does not matter what level of the subcontractor, tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, depending on how much you are. And you want to be subject to that because under the CPARs, and when you are then trying to prime, you can tell everybody, yes, I do have experience and I know what we are talking about in here. So that is the main issue that you need to take into account, especially when you are reading and trying to understand this full RFP at this level. Okay. Have there been any questions that you think that we may need to stop, or shall we continue and then take the questions at the end of the session, Jasmine?
Yeah, I think you can keep going. And just to remind everybody, you can type out your questions in the chat box, and we will pause, later on in the presentation to do Q&A. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Okay, so in this case, so continuing, then to the next one, okay? Okay. So continue with the action that you read the entire LFP. The question is actions prior to the award, assuming that you win, okay, many people go ahead and sign right away. And I asked them, do you read it before you sign it? And they say, why? I said, well, because the people who are putting this together are human beings too, which is mean that they are subject to make errors. And I have seen this so many times that people don't realize that somebody make a human error and the contract that they signed was not really the same contract that they bid. And you want to make sure that you are fixing a lot of these issues. And therefore, some other people look at this and they say, hey, can we negotiate items? Before you sign, yes. Once you sign, it's very hard to negotiate because once you sign, you're saying, I agree with this. Okay, take into account that between the RFP, the notification that you want, and the startup, there's going to be what is called an entrance conference. And in that entrance conference is when you're going to clarify when the clock starts ticking and clarifications of some other rules of the game, to whom you are reporting, who is looking out for you. And then there are 3 different officers that you need to take into account. And you need to know. One is your contracting officer, also known as the KO. The second one is your contracting technical officer, or CTO. And the other one is your contracting technical officer representative of COTAR. Most of the time, if you are the prime, you are going to be dealing 90% to 95% of the time with the COTAR, the contracting technical officer representative. He's going to be the one giving you all the directions and telling you what is good, what is bad, how are you doing, what are you not doing, etc. The contracting technical officer is the one that is to sign off if you are doing a good job or not, based on the information, not that you gave them, but based on the information that is provided by the COTAR. Okay? The contracting officer is the most important one. And you're going to find out that they are going to try to limit interactions with you because they are the only officer that have authority to bind the U.S. government in that case. No the CTO, no the COTAR. The only one that have what is called a binding authority, that what they say, what they have and what they claim, the only one that have that is the CEO. If the CTO tell you, oh, you can go ahead and do this, don't worry about it. Yeah, worry. I've seen many cases where the COTAR or the CTO give a command that the CEO that does not approve. And if the CEO does not approve those changes, then they may not pay you for those changes. I want to make sure everybody knows and understand that. Very, very, very important. Okay, that you have that you can continue, okay, making sure that all these items are represented correctly. Many times the contracting officer may have what is called a contracting officer assistant. He does not have the authority to bind the government. I want to make sure only the CO has the authority to bind the government. And if you go ever to their offices, they actually have a nice little little like kind of almost like a diploma type of things issued by from the Congress of the United States, saying yes, you have the right to bind the contract, the U.S. government in that case, and that is extremely important. It's a very nice certificate what I have seen, okay, in there. So making sure that you can do all your negotiations before you sign, etc. And yes, and I'm going to give you a pretty good example of some of the negotiations that it happened, and it's very common, especially in the service contract area. Okay, they issue an RFP, and in the RFP they tell you the people that you need to bring needs to have this level of education, this amount of experience. And I'm going to give you a very clear example, something that happened very recently, where they say we need people with a master's degree and 10 years of experience, right? Well, that's what it was delivered during the RFP, and then the company won the contract, right? Then the COTAR and the CTO came over and says, well, can you hire the incumbents is there? It's going to help us a lot. Well, it turned out to be that the incumbents did not have the master's degree in 10 years, but they actually have a PhD level and 25 years of experience. What happened with that is that these people were expecting way, way, way more money than what you bid the contract for. So what did we do? Okay, they say, yeah, but why is this not possible? As well, because these people are expecting an amount of money that is way, very high, not the level, because that's what you guys described that you wanted. We would love to hire them, but we cannot because these people are asking for far more money than what we have in there. The CEO and the CTO and the contractor got together, okay, in a conference call with the contractor, and they were able to negotiate and issue a contract modification as a result of this negotiation. And then they say, okay, because this is important to us, we, the government, made a mistake. We are fixing this mistake under this negotiation. Tell us what do we need to. But take into account that sometimes you need to be wise enough to understand that if the modification increasing the value of the contract is more than 35% of what it was awarded, by the federal acquisition regulation, the CEO must stop the contract and rebid it again. So you want to make sure that if there is any negotiation and any modification increasing the cost of the contract is no more than 35% of the total. Okay? That is what it is important to know and understand how about these modifications and how to handle it in that case. And I have seen many cases where the CTO or the contractor did not know about the 35%. Okay, and we have to remind it, and they went over and checked with the CEO, and the CEO told me, yes, that is correct. We cannot make these changes at any more than the 35% of the total contract worth. Well, we have to be very, very, very careful about making some of those changes. Okay? And, dealing with these negotiations. So then from the pricing to execution, most people say, well, this is what I offer, and this is the reasons why I won the contract. I was the best price. Are you sure you were not the cheapest? There is a concept that is now, it was supposed to be meant for goods and not really for services, but they are applying it to goods and services. It's called for short LPTA. LPTA stands for the lowest price technically acceptable. Look at that in your section N, which is instructions to the offerors on how they're going to be awarded. I know many contracts and many people who won contracts and then they are not able to execute because they put such a low price for certain labor categories that they cannot even get the right people to do the contract. So what happened, regardless if it's a fixed price at T&M or any type of a contract, is that happened to you, you're gonna be dinged pretty bad because then you are not delivering in the contract. Okay? Take into account also that depending on the regulations that the contracts may have, and that's what I say, read the 52s. Can you have consultants versus employees? Yes, but at what level? Okay, when you are in a small business and this contract is issued with a verbiage that says set aside, the government is expecting that you are going to be using 51% or more of your own employees, not consultants, but employees. To my knowledge, there is only one agency that can treat employees and consultants the same, and that is the USAID, Agency for International Development. And it's very clear within what is called the ADAR or the USAID acquisitions regulations that yes, they will consider 1099, not a subcontract, a 1099 consultant the same as the employee, but only that agency, to my knowledge, do that. As of today, I do not know any other agency to my knowledge. So if you decide to use consultants and not employees because they may look like they are cheaper, you need to be aware of the consequences. I have seen contracts being canceled because of that. Okay, and the contracting officer issued immediate cancellation notice. Okay, due to problems with the compliance issues. Okay, no question asked. The other item you need to take into account is that there is another big agency that is going to be overseeing every company and every place that do business in the United States. Is called the Internal Revenue Services. And the Internal Revenue Services, a lot of times, is very clear about who is an employee or who is a consultant. A consultant is somebody that is independent and it will have independency on how to perform their work. Okay. Fortunately or unfortunately, that does not fit very well with the government contract. And when the government is telling you what everybody must do, and you are telling everybody what they must do in order to comply with the contract. So if you guys have not been involved in what is called by the IRS a 1099 audit, it's usually relied on 10 big questions that the IRS will ask to all your 1099 to determine if they are employees or consultants. It's becoming so critical that even the Department of Labor is now involved in determining who is an employee and who is a consultant in that case, and they are issuing even the states regulations get involved, Maryland, Virginia or every state sometimes issue the regulations to tell you who is a consultant and who is an employee. So if they are expecting that you use employee, make sure that you get employees. That's part of the compliance issues that you need to understand. Be very, very careful. Like I always said, a friend advised me of what I need to do, which is, and I say dot, 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 dot. 99.99% of the time, those advices will throw you out of compliance and may throw your company into trouble. That you may not see it immediately, but you may see it later on. And I have seen companies that have completed jobs, close out, and then they get into trouble because some of these consultants then find out that they were geared and they were not supposed to be consultants, they were supposed to be employees. Therefore, they start suing the company. And under the legal system in the US, anybody can sue anybody. And then you go to court to prove if they are right or wrong in this case. That is the most important portion that you need to understand about the US legal system, specifically if you are on a business on your own, to understand what is going to happen. Okay, but understand about the LPTA, understand about a lot of these items, okay, and the conditions that you need to have, and the reporting also that you need to have. Okay, for example, we are going, through the Department of Defense, and some of my clients, they're going right now through audits. The audits include that they want to know, and they want to see pay stub, they wanted to see processing of the payroll, they wanted to see all the stuff on all these items, and you need just simply to show that to them. Okay, and when that auditor comes in, it's gonna cost you money because you have to take part of your time to do it. Okay, but the longer that he's there, the more money is costing you. So you want that auditor just to check, everything is correct. He's out, and then you are continue doing your business in your productive way. That is usually the advice that I give to all of my clients in this sense. So be very careful with what your friends advise you that you need to do, because it may not be in the full compliance in that case. So, as I mentioned before, you need to know who is your contracting officer. You need to know who is your contracting technical officer representative in there, and to whom do I need to report any issues. A lot of these items are going to be clarified at the entrance conference that you're going to have. And this is the moment to ask a lot of the questions. You can still ask questions later, and they have to answer it to you if you are the prime. Okay, but remember, the only one that has the right to bind the government is the contracting officer. So be very, very careful of official and what I call unofficial communications. The same thing, and this is the important part of here, that the government makes it very clear who is the CEO, who's the contracting technical officers, and the COTAR. You also need to do the same for your own company. Who do you want to connect, and who do you want to have the ability to discuss this item? I have seen many companies that an employee go over and send an email to the CEO, oh yeah, we can do this, don't worry, it's not going to cost you anything, and turn out to be that actually ended up costing a lot of additional money. And the CEO say, hey, somebody from your company make this representation. If they make that representation, they are going to take it as an official representation. You also need to let them know, the same way that they are letting you know, who on your company have the right to bind the company, and who has the right to communicate officially with everybody in that case. That's what I say, be very wary of official and unofficial communication. Very, very, very careful. Okay? Treating it like your life depends on it, because really the life depends on it. Okay? Any changes that somebody makes to the government has to be followed by what is called a mod. Okay, mod stands for the contract modification. And they need to tell you what items are being affected in that contract modifications. Okay, in that contract modifications are usually followed by a number. They are normally listed as a P001 for the first mod. A lot of times this mod are just to give you money, more money, increase the funded value, not the value of the contract, but give you the funded value. And we're going to see that later on. There is a big difference between the value of the contract and the funded value of the contract. Sometimes it's just minor, correcting minor typos or minor issues in there. But if you only have, let's say, all the way up to mod 004, and all of, sorry, I need to drink some water. Hold on. It's the last mod that you receive for 004, and all of a sudden you see that they are issuing you mod 007. That means that you're missing 5 and 6. Ask the contracting officer, hey, I looked at this is your mod number 7. Where is mod 5 and 6? I did not receive it. Ask that question. It's a very, very, very legitimate question because you need to know what were on those mods. Sometimes it may have been tangled in an email that you did not receive for whatever reason is in your server or your emails or anything like that, okay? Some of them may need to be signed. Some of them do not need to be signed because they don't change the characteristic of the contract. But any mod that changes the overall value up or down, value of the contract, not funding, value of the contract, must be countersigned by you. If it's not countersigned by you or the representative that you have in your company to do that, is not valid. And be very careful. For example, about 2 years ago, a person, a VP of a company that was not authorized to sign, received a mod, and the mod was reducing the values and what it needs to be billed. And the person went ahead and received it, signed it. Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. And all of a sudden, when they went over to bill, the bill was rejected because they say, no, you signed up. And we actually have to ask who signed it. And then we discovered that this individual was a VP of the company, received it, did not pass it along to the president or anybody else into the company or to the contract management, signed it and accepted, and the government was binding them to those amounts. The VP even said, oh, I did not understand even the mod. I said, that is the problem. You need to understand what you were signing. Oh, I just thought that he just said, he signed this. Okay, it says, no, never hurry to sign something, especially if you do not understand what it is being signed. Okay, and take into account, even if you are a subcontractor, who are the people that are allowed to bind your company? And what are the statutes and regulations? In the state of Maryland, the title of a VP means absolutely nothing and does not mean that because somebody gives you a VP title that you are considered an officer of the company. Only officers of the corporations have the authority to bind the corporation. And in order to bind the corporation in the state of Maryland, there has to be a statute issued by the board of directors that you are allowed to bind the corporation. Is it the same thing in Virginia? No. For example, Virginia is just across the river. In Virginia, anybody that has a title of a VP or a C-level have the authority to bind the corporation. Those items must be controlled by your company. Why I say it, even though that this is all Maryland, is because it depends on where you are operating, not where your company was incorporated, that you need to make sure that everything is correct. If you bid in a contract in Alabama and your company is in Maryland, you are going to be ruled by Alabama law in that case. And you want to make sure that you understand a lot of these items. And that's why it is important to make sure that you are in control of your own company in this case. Okay? So, compliance. What is compliance? Is the act of or process of compliance to a desired demand, proposal, or regimen, or to coercion. So compliance is really, really very, very big in any government. People usually say, I am in a small business, not a big one, therefore this does not apply to me. If it is in your contract, it does apply to you. Only if you are claiming an exception that you are in a small business. Okay, so most people say, this is what I propose on my price and how to execute. Okay, why the quota is asking me, this cost me a fortune. Well, yeah, you were supposed to identify those issues at the very beginning. That's why every RFP has a section or a timing to ask for questions and clarification. Because after a war, it's very difficult to reprice the contract, especially if you win. And as I mentioned before, if you cannot perform, then you are going to be subject to what is called a blacklisting by the federal government and telling any other agency do not award anything to this company because they cannot perform. Okay, that is the most important issue. Most people say, yeah, but this is unbelievable. Well, you were supposed to read, understand, and clarify your entire process during the RFP in this case. And I wanted to point out an issue that is called the SCA. And in some cases, is especially if you are in the construction business or some certain maintenance business, it might also be, and you may have heard it, it's called the Davis-Bacon Act. What is the SCA? SCA stands for the Service Contract Act. They are certain positions that were supposed to be part of government employees hired directly by the government, but the government prefer to contract those positions out. Therefore, they need to let you know that this contract that you are receiving is subject to the Service Contract Act, which is mean that you need to pay a minimum, not a maximum, a minimum to those labor categories that the people are going to be at security. And those labor categories are determined by the region, the location, as is, by the Department of Labor. It's called the WD, or wage determination. It has to be, the contract has to be executed within that WD region, which can include the county and the state or an area, as is being defined in that case. So this is important because anybody within the SCA not only has a minimum floor labor rate that you must pay to the people who are going to be your employee, but also certain fringe benefit minimum that you need to cover. And a lot of these minimum fringes, include vacation, sick leave, and what is called health and welfare, that is to cover health issues under the Health Insurance Act and several others, including retirement. If your company is not covering the amount of the different levels and the employee choose not to, you must pay the health and welfare separately to each employee. I want to tell you, because many companies and clients have got in trouble for that. For example, when you pay, if your contract is subject to the SCA, you need to issue a pay stub every time that you pay your employees, showing how much they earn it as part of their regular hourly rate or the wages, and a separate line for the health and welfare that it was negotiated in that case. Access to not show these two separate lines can land you in trouble if you get audited. And I have seen many times that people say, oh, I don't care. I just let it in there. Am I gonna give you an idea that it actually happened to my daughter when she was first hired by a subcontractor that did not know how to handle that. And she did all her work and she finished. She worked for about a year and a half. And after a year and a half, the contract ended. She was laid off. Fine. But 6 months down the road, we started to receive additional checks from that subcontractors in the name of my daughter. And they were like coming like one or two or three every 2 or 3 days. Turned out to be that the subcontractor did not take into account that those positions were SCA. They did not pay the health and welfare, and they were forced by the Department of Labor to pay them after the contract ended. Does that mean that you're gonna get reimbursed by the prime or by the government? Absolutely no. It is on your dime that you have to do that. That's what I say very clear. Make sure that you understand those provisions. The Davis-Bacon Act, which is one step above the Service Contract Act, is that you are supposed to pay what is called the prevailing wages for certain labor categories that may differ by the region. For example, if you are hiring a carpenter and the contract is subject to the Davis-Bacon Act, whether you are a prime or a sub, you must comply to it. The carpenter, if you send them to work in Baltimore, may have a different rate than if you send them to work in Bethesda, for example. And you must pay to the exact same person those prevailing wages in that case. And under the Davis-Bacon Act, you are supposed also to submit what is called a certified payroll, and it's not a certification that says that you pay. It's in a special form that you need to fill and complete on how much you are paying by the region and how much fringes you are paying to everybody in that sense. The third and most important portion of the Service Contract Act and the Davis-Bacon Act is that you must provide right of first refusal to the people who are already working in that contract. And when they come in to work in your contract, they have seniority, because if you look, for example, on the fringe and the PTO level that they're going to be earning, is based when they started to work in that type of a contract or in that location, not when they become your own employee. So you may get a new employee, and a new employee, if he was working in there 5 years ago or more, may have seniority and may be earning higher amount of PTO. Therefore, can you ask the question, how many of these and how long these people have been working in order to do your pricing correctly? Absolutely, yes. And that is what is important to read the entire RFP, okay, to know and understand about this item. Okay? Based on this, we are now at the level that we are finishing the stage one, so we can go ahead and start with the questions now. In this case, Jasmine, do you want to read the questions or do you want me to read them and understanding? I only see one in here, but I'm not sure if I am correct.
Yes. Thanks, Gregory. So yes, now's your time to type out your questions. Maybe you joined a bit later and would like Gregory to repeat something he mentioned earlier on, or you just have your own questions. So please type them out. Okay, so we have a question from David. Can you elaborate on the fixed price or time and material differences and what that means to us as the newly hired contractor?
Very, very, very good question. As I mentioned before, there is a financial risk, okay, in the contract when you are executing. And the financial risk is measured. If it's a fixed price contract, you're gonna be billing every month, okay, on that level, as long as you are completing all your deliverables into the contract. Whether you have all the people, not the people, whether they work more or they work less, there is no level of effort okay, on a typical fixed price. I have seen this, that they issue a fixed price level of effort. To me, that is just like a regular T&M, because you have to show them that they did the work and that you came out with a pricing on a per hour basis that includes your direct, indirects, and your profit fee on that. And usually on any T&M, they may be asking you to submit a report of how many hours everybody worked. In that case, in order to confirm and make the pay. So it is a financial risk that you may be facing in that case. Yes, somebody's also immediate pointer is asking that there are three types of a contract. Yes, fixed price, where your company is taking full risk. T&M, where the risk is shared between the government and the federal government and your company. And the cost plus, where the government is taking the full risk because they are going to be reimbursing you for all your direct and indirect costs plus your fee. In this case, your pricing and fee. Those are the main three types of a contract. Take into account that even if you come out with a price and they agree to the price, everything is subject to audit. And the government can come back, and that's why it's important, because it's part of the 52s. The government can come back and audit how did you arrive to this T&M cost, and then to understand if it was priced correctly or incorrectly. If the government do that, because they are looking to reduce the price per hour, not to increase it, but to reduce the price per hour. Can you ask about the same, or can we review it after you went into the contract? If and only if there is a substantial change that you may need to say that you may want to have what is called a request for equitable adjustment, or REA. And then you have to substantiate why do you need a request for equitable adjustment. I have submitted and calculated requests for equitable adjustment for several of our clients. And 90 to 95% of the times they are acceptable. The other 5% is that the government never responded, which I think is ludicrous, but since they never responded, I'm not sure how, to me, it means that they are rejecting it in that case. Okay, but you can bring issues in there. You can bring issues in there, and bring attorneys and have the attorneys discuss it, okay, but that is gonna cost money. If you win, you are entitled to recoup the attorney's cost most of the time. Not always, but most of the time. Vivian Harris says about 19 minutes in, the speaker says, try not to get into cost plus for a specific reason. Can he, well, cost plus contracts require a lot of understanding and allocation of cost. Usually your company will be pre-audit before you get into a cost plus contract to see if you have the capability to manage cost plus contract. Most of the time, if your revenues in your companies are $750,000 or less, the federal acquisitions regulation says that you may have an escape route to say, we cannot do a cost plus contract. And the government must then convert that contract into a fixed price, sometimes into a T&M, but into a fixed price. That is the mandate that the FAR regulation says. Take into account that the government does not choose unilaterally how to give you either a fixed price, T&M, or cost plus. If the cost is known to the government prior to the RFP, very well known because they have issued this contract many times, et cetera, and there are no surprises expected in there, they must issue the contract as a fixed price. If there are still several issues that may vary depending on the level of efforts on some of the materials, etc., they may issue that as a T&M, time and material contract. Materials are always on a cost plus. Any claim that you see that is on material, equipment, etc., they are always considered cost plus. And the only thing that you normally can add into any material, ODC costs, etc., is G&A. Although, if you are operating under a GSA contract, GSA does not accept G&A in travel costs, for example. Okay, but if the cost, whether known or unknown, implies that there is a very high risk of changes because of the conditions, for example, if you have to execute a contract into what is called an OCONUS, some of you may not know, it refers to outside of the continental US. The government is mandated to issue that cost as a cost plus, not as a fixed price, not as a T&M, because the government cannot throw you into a risk that you cannot control. That is very, very important. If you cannot control that, for example, if you get a contract and then you need to perform in theater, i.e. in a war-torn zone area, that's what we call theater, all of those contracts are cost plus. And by the way, whether you are a prime or a sub, the prime must award also a cost plus contract to their sub. It's called a like for a like in that case. Make sure that you are in control of these issues too, in that case. Any additional questions?
No, not at this time.
Okay. So then I guess it is 11:04. Why don't we take a 10-minute break so we will meet again by 11:14. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep, that sounds good. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, we are now going into the stage 2 is managing the contract, which is that you're going to be executing the contract and what issues and items you need to take into account. So moving right away in there, let's just start, okay, scope of work or SOW. Remember, there's going to be an entrance conference. That's the start of date. And then you're going to clarify a lot of these items that you see there. Okay, so when does the clock start ticking for the contract? The contracting officer needs to let you know that, and the contracting officer needs to be present in that meeting. Then you need to know, okay, what kind of clearances and badges you need for your contractors. A lot of times people don't understand, but when you are a contractor or a subcontractor, you must carry sometimes badges that says who you are and for whom you are working for when you are at any government location, whether it's a base, whether it's a building, etc. If the contracts require security clearances, that is one of the biggest issues that you need to understand. What level of security clearances they need? Right now, the minimum level is what is called the public trust. Public trust is usually carried by the agency that is hiring you. You don't have to do anything, but the employees that you are hiring and yourself need to understand that they are going to be subject to a security clearance level, and they're going to do a background investigation on them. Sometimes it may come back in a few days, sometimes may take up to 3 months. And a lot of the times, these people may not be able to do any work until their clearances have been done and they are acceptable. Very important. They are not looking to see if you have a perfect life. Just want to let you know. They just want to know if you are subject to blackmailing, as example. And in all the clearances level, If you have a problem in the past and you were arrested, like in one case for one of our clients, he says, well, I am afraid because one time I was arrested many, many years ago for the possession of cannabis, marijuana, in that case, when it was all illegal, and just disclose it. You don't need to, just disclose it, the date and the time that you did you pass all your dues and stuff, fine. He disclosed it, it took about 2 months to clear him up, but after that, he came out clear, now he's happily working in the contract for the last 5-6 years in that case. So that is the most important part. Now, once you come over above public trust and you start going into the secret, top secret SCI, etc., you need to have a special clearance investigation, and even your company has to be considered to have clearances in that case. That can take time because those agencies are overloaded with work right now. So if any of you already have a secret, top secret SCI level from a previous employment and you are now in your company, I can tell you and bet whatever you need to make sure that these people keep your clearances level. You can keep it even if it's not active up to 2 years. After 2 years, it becomes automatically inactive in that case. However, you can reinstate it as they need it, but in order for your company to obtain what is called a facility clearances, you need to have or be listed in a contract that needs that facility clearances. So if you are operating as a subcontractor or something like that, or even as a consultant, beg to the prime or to the people that you are doing any work, and I say literally beg them to give you a DD 254 so you can start that process because it can take months and months. One of our clients that did not have any clearances level with DOD landed a contract in an agency that when they look and they say, oh my God, they're going to be requesting you top secret SCI, which I was correct. They issue a top secret SCI and they have nothing. And that was 2 years ago. And we started the process of trying to get them the security clearances level. And everybody has been helping, but as of today, they have not been able to get any more than an interim secret level. Nothing that is officially level in that sense in there. Second, about the clearances, take into account that sometimes certain clearances may be reciprocated by other agencies. A lot of the DoD clearances can be reciprocated by a lot of other agencies, with the exception of the National Security Agency, NSA, that if you have a clearances in NSA, they can reciprocate to the DoD. But if you have a DoD, they will not reciprocate to the NSA. Similar issues are also happening that the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, have now also their own secret clearances. I am not sure or clear how they reciprocate and how they can reciprocate in that level. So you may want to make sure that they are reciprocable. And you can ask questions, at that level of who do you need to ask the questions. Because I have seen people being awarded the contract and waiting sometimes for months and even years to get the clearances level so they can perform in the contract. And while this is happening, you cannot collect or you cannot say that you are doing any work. And sometimes even the agency, if they need the work right away, they may say, we are canceling this for convenience to the government. Nothing to ding you in that case, because, hey, you do not have the clearances, but they may say, we need this job right away. Therefore, for convenience to the government, we are canceling this contract to you and reissuing it to somebody else in that. There is a little bit of a conundrum that, technically speaking, is almost like who comes first, the chicken or the egg. You cannot have a clearance unless you have a contract that requires the clearances. But agencies, because the DSL is so backlogged, that they say, well, if it's not fully approved or you do not have the clearances, I am not willing to provide this, which is cannot run together with the based on the clearances and regulations. But the government says we need this now, and we cannot wait months and months to get it because it's a delay that does not favor the goal. So you understand then how the things goes and how you need to make sure that you have this. Some of you are not understanding, are not familiar with the secret. Secret level is the lowest level. Top secret is a higher. For example, between the secret and the top secret, the secret, I think that they do a background investigation up to 5 years. On the top secret is up to 10 years. Top secret, SCI, the similar, but they might do what is SCI stand for Security Compartmentalized Information Facility. That means that you're going to be working in a SCIF, which is a high top priority. Most of them are owned by the government. However, some contractors have built a SCIF and have gotten approved. There is also, on top of this, the background investigation is supposed to be right below the public trust, just to let you know, that's a mistake that I had to give. But the top secret SCI, also they may ask you to do what is called a polygraph test, or the so-called lie detector. Okay? So those are the different level of security clearances that you are going to be facing and that you're going to be taking into account in that case in there. Some of you have gone through, you know what you have to go through this annual, after you have it, you need to make sure that you have annual assistances, okay, and connotations about your clearances to keep it active, because otherwise it will become inactive. And if inactive, you may need to reactivate it, and it may take much longer to do a lot of this activation. Okay, in that case. We're going to be answering the question at the end of the sessions also. I saw David Woolman with the questions in it. Okay, so in this case, remember what I say. You want the contract now, they are expecting you to use employees, not consultants, not subcontractors. A lot of the times, whether it's a consultant, subcontractors may need to be approved by the government, depending on the federal acquisitions regulations that they have in there. Especially if you see that restricting subcontracting activities does not mean that if you wanted to bring somebody to work as a subcontractor, they have to be approved by the government to work as a subcontractor. But take into account that there is an internal process that when you are hiring employees, you need to have a good hiring process. You need to make sure that you have a good employee manual that tell you the rules and regulations that are going to control that person as an employee. Especially if it's the first hire that you're doing, you need to know what is that employee expecting from you, from your company. You're going to be dealing with taxes. Your company will become a withholding agency for your employees. Okay, you need to deal with federal and state income taxes, sometimes even with local taxes, depending on when the person work or leave. Take into account that we've been spoiled when it comes into taxes into this region here in Maryland and the greater Washington, D.C., because if the contract is in Virginia, but you live in the state of Maryland, there is an agreement between Maryland, Virginia, DC, West Virginia, and Delaware that you can work in one state and live in a different state. Not really for all the other states in the United States. Some of them have similar agreement, but you need to become familiar in that case, which is mean that if the company is in Maryland and the contract is being executed in Virginia, but your employees live in Maryland, yes, you can withhold the employees' taxes on their withholding in Maryland, but say, hey, they're working in Virginia. Not a problem. but you need to disclose those issues. Sometimes not the same thing if you find out that your contract is in Virginia, but they might be living in South Carolina. You may need to withhold taxes in the state that they are working. Okay. You also need to deal with unemployment insurance taxes, so also called the SUTA, state unemployment tax, and the FUTA, federal unemployment tax. And you also need to make sure that you have insurance for workers' compensation. That means if something happened to your employees, get involved into any accident or any issues while they are working at your site or at the government site. Okay, and the workers' compensation is based on the NICE codes that you are operating. All this aspect, okay, about how to process and pay the taxes, that's where the ADPs of this world, the Agosto, etc., take very good care of a lot of these processes to pay and deal with the taxes, okay, and the withholding and the payment on time. So you don't have to have that burden on yourself. However, to make sure that you know what you are doing, I always recommend, and we actually teach a class about that on payroll issues. There are two publications completely free under the IRS that you need to be very familiar. It's almost like the Bible for payroll taxes. It's called Circular E, or publication 15, publication 15B, which is the benefits that you can provide that are tax exempt to your employees. Okay, both of them completely free. They make minor changes, okay, every year, so you must download them from the IRS website. Don't let anybody tell you need to pay anything because they are 100% free. Just go to IRS and you just have to say, okay, I need publication 15 or publication 15B. Okay, and then you can see in there, especially publication 15B, that tells you all the benefits that you can give to your employees that are non-taxable for the company and non-taxable for the employee also. Very, very, very important because while we love taxes, because they pay for a lot of our issues, okay, we do not want to pay more taxes than what it is really necessary. Okay, and remember, and we're going to see this later on, when you hire an employee, they're expecting that after 15 days of the timesheet or 30 days, whatever is your expectations, okay, or his expectation, you must pay them their salary. And that's why we are going to be looking into some of these issues into the contract financing, which is the stage 3 of this presentation. Okay. Continuing, you still hiring employees, protecting your company and yourself. Make sure that you have a good employee manual for that case, because that is going to be what is going to be loading those issues, those items. Okay, and I have seen many of my clients getting in trouble because they forget about it, that employees can have actions against the company. And that's why the employee manual, it is important to tell them what they should and they should not do. And more important, the person that sometimes you trust the most can be your worst enemy, which is the supervisor that you agree to supervise your employees and sign up on their timesheets. Timesheets is the most important document in the entire company, whether you are on a fixed price P&L, it doesn't matter how. The timesheet just says that the employee work, that they put those hours, and you are allocating those hours based on what the employee said that they did the work. Okay, it is your job to make sure that the employees have the timesheet, whether they are electronic, in paper, or any way. That is the most important and strong document. If your supervisor sign up and say, yes, this employee did this work and everything else, anybody can come back and go all the way to the Supreme Court and say, oh, this employee did not work. And they say, here's the timesheet. he signed it, your supervisor accepted it. Point closed at that moment. So going through this, and this is all should be labeled, and if the employee did not do the work, the supervisor is supposed to reject the timesheet and says, no, this is incorrect, and tell them why, and go through the entire process. In addition to that, your employee manual needs to make references to what is important, especially when it comes over to fringe benefits, federal holidays, any federal government contract that you are working, whether you are the prime or whether you are a sub, you must provide the full 11 currently available federal holidays. No question asked. That is a mandate listed in every contract. They tell you, and you can see it in the RFP, the prime or the employee must provide these different holidays to his employees. Okay? Pay time off and sick pay. In some cases, like for example, when we were talking about the Service Contract Act, you may need to provide separate pay time off or sick pay. At the higher level, when the employee is fully exempt, you may combine the pay time off and the sick leave. But for example, if your policy is to provide 2 weeks of pay time off and 1 week of sick, then the combined should be at least 3 weeks of combined pay time off. Retirement benefits. Remember, the Obamacare is still the law of the land when it comes over to health insurance. Retirement benefits and any other benefits. Why the benefits are very important? To all employees, benefits are important. In fact, I can tell you that the more benefits your company provides, the more money you're going to be saving in salaries. If you really wanted to reduce the salary of the people, don't look on any other trick, but just start providing great benefits, because in my experience, there is a cost saving of 10 to 1. You can save up to $10 for every dollar of benefits that you provide to your employees. Because most of the time, a good employee is working for a good benefits, not all the way around. Okay? Many people say, well, the health insurance, I only need to provide health insurance to the employees. The family, I don't care. If they need it, they can buy it on their own. Guess what? They're going to be asking for a higher salary if they have to buy health insurance for their family. So come over to an understanding that if you provide the health insurance for them and their family, there's going to be less pressure on the salaries amount. And that is what it is important. That's why the benefits are important into this case, that I want everybody to know and understand related to these issues. Subcontracting. A subcontractor and a consultant are not the same. That's something extremely, extremely important to know and understand. A consultant is an individual. It's going to be providing you with a social security number in the W-9, and you must issue a 1099 at the end of every year for the job that you pay him. However, what is the big differences? If he's a consultant, you cannot flow down the 52 that we were discussing at the very beginning to a consultant, because he's not a contractor, he's not a corporation. A subcontractor, yes, you must flow down all the pass-through clauses. So everything that you are subject to, the subcontractor must be subject to. You must have agreements, okay, with your consultant. You need to show them how you're going to manage and what type of a contract do I need for my consultants. It's up to you. How do you want to manage, whether it is a T&N type of a contract, etc. That is part of what you need to do. both subcontractors and consultants need to show you that they have proof of insurance. And by insurance means liability insurance. A liability insurance means if they are working at the government side and somebody trample and break something, who's going to pay for that? Your company insurance, liability insurance may pay for it, but they're going to try to attach it to somebody else. And the best way is just to make sure that you have proof of insurance, because otherwise your insurance is also going to go up in prices. Especially not only that, but also if anybody get injured, that's when the workers' comp will kick in. And the insurance company may say, hey, this guy is not your employee, therefore we are not covering him. And he will have the right to sue you in that case, and you will need to defend yourself. So you need to make sure that you bring your consultants into compliance. Many cases, I have seen situations where the person say, yeah, I agree to be an employee, but can I be a consultant? And when you tell them, well, do you have proof of insurance, liability, workers' comp, etc.? Oh, no, I don't have it. Then you must be an employee at this time until you have the ability to get this type of insurance, okay, at this level. That is the most important portion that you need to make sure that you have, because otherwise your company can be deemed, okay, with some heavy costs and some heavy issues. And remember, sometimes it's not an accident that can produce. It's just also an accident that can be involved that it was not caused by them. Fire, etc. There are even cases that they may be asking you if they need to do some travel from one place to another. If they get involved in a car, in an automobile accident, their car insurance may deny and says, no, we are not going to pay for any damages in here because this person was doing some work, not for what he's supposed to be doing. That's not where he's supposed to be commuting. Therefore, it does not apply. So you're going to see that even the government ask you to make sure that you have car insurance for everybody that is doing any work in your company. Even though that you may not have any car, you may need to have that insurance available to them. Okay, and if they are your subcontractor or your consultant, you need to make sure that they will be covered for that, because what you do is that you get what is called back-to-back coverage in order to make sure that your company is not taking a higher risk than what it is supposed to be doing. Always, if they say, yes, I have it, ask for the proof of insurance. It's called the ACORD certificate, okay, or COI, certificate of insurance. Ask for it, okay, and ask them to name your company, okay, as one of the insurer in there, okay, for all the levels and conditions that, you know, you may need. Extremely, extremely important, okay? So then let's move next to what is called, okay, here this, you know, this contractors and consultants will explain that, sorry. Okay, so let's move again. The scope of work, as you say, you're gonna have a lot of reporting that you need to do, monthly, annual, other reporting. Get familiar with what is called the 75% rule. The 75% rule applies that if you've been funded up to a certain level, once you have spent 75% of that funding value, you need to tell the contracting officer, I am running out of money, I will need the funding for the rest of the time. Remember what I say on the schedules and the reportings that you need to do and the performance that you need to have, the monthly, the annual report, etc. Pay strong attention to this, and that they are being submitted, and that you are keeping copies in your company for that matters. Right. Any other reporting might not be monthly or annually, but any other reporting that is stuff that your company may be subject to, make sure that you are covering that. If you get, let's say, a 5-year contract, they're gonna approve you for funding for the first year. You have a value for the next 5 years, but it's non-funding. And you need to make sure that you are performing in that contract. Your quota will tell you, yes, you are doing fine, you are doing great, or no, you are not doing fine or great. And you are putting in jeopardy the additional years because the government can come over after the year and says, no, we are not approving you for the additional years, and that's it. And your contract, even though that you work very hard to get a 5-year contract, ends in there. Can you protest that? Yes, you can, but it costs money and it costs issues, okay? So you need to make sure, because if they're giving you that because of a performance rating or any issues like that, that is what is going to prepare. The government can give you what is called, what we call for sure, a T4C, or termination for cause. Cause mean that you are doing something so bad, so wrong, that the government do not want to continue. And they can give you that termination for cause even in the middle of the first year. Okay, once they say, no, this reporting, you were supposed to perform, let's say, at 80%, when you're being scoring all the time at 60 or 50%, they may say, no, that's it. You are out of it. The government can also give you what is called a termination for convenience. And we discussed that a moment ago when we say, yeah, the government can give a termination for convenience to the government, because the government said, we no longer need these services. Therefore, we are giving you the termination for convenience to the government. You have the right at that moment to make claims to the government, because all the stuff requires preparations, spending, and you can negotiate how you're going to be collecting the termination for convenience clauses in them. There is also a non-renewal option of periods, which is what I mentioned. If you are doing, not that great, but the government does not want to go through any process or discussing anything, and say, you know what, we just decided we are not going to give you the option periods of renewal. That's it. And your contract ends up at that moment. As I mentioned before, on the contract modification, the tracking and the acknowledgement of the tracking, if you see that you are missing any, make sure that you request, okay, the items that are being missed in there. The difference between a mod to a font and a real modification. Any real modification that they are trying to mod your contract, deliverable, etc., must be accepted by you. So that's what I say. Can I say no? Yes, you can say no. Or can you negotiate the mod? Yes, you can negotiate the mod, especially if it's a contract change or requires any money. But remember, you do not want the value of anything to go above the 35% of the claim and or the contract, because that may trigger an immediate cancellation of the contract. Okay? But if they're asking you, hey, you now need to do this, and they add you an additional level of effort or work into the scope without compensating you, yes, you can say no. Says, no, we need more money to do this thing, because that's what it happened. And, then the negotiation start also at that moment to do it in that way. I always recommend, do not start the work until you get the mark signed. Otherwise, you're going to be working at risk. Working at risk means that any effort and money that you put on, you may not recoup those costs. And that will be on you. Have I seen it? Many and multiple times. That's why you want to make sure that the mods, etc., are doing, in that case. The next session is the contract financing. So we are now at the point that we can start talking about the questions. And I see a question here by David. Regarding security clearances, can you explain the difference between personal security clearances and business security clearances, and how to get them if you don't already have? Again, a personal security clearances is the one that you probably have when you were working as an employee, whether it was directly for the government or for another government contract. And they put you for the clearances and you file your F76, etc., and then they go over and they test you, they may interview you, etc., and they tell you you obtain clearance at X level, secret, top secret, SCI, etc. The business security clearance is also known as the facility security clearances. So your company that you may own, you may have a clearance in yourself, but unless you get a facility security clearances for your company, they may not be able to hold your clearance. For that, you need to have issue what is called a DD, a form DD 254, that somebody, whether it's an agency or a prime contractor, is sponsoring you for that DD 254. It used to be that sometimes we will ask a friend that owns a company, hey, can you issue DD 254 for me so I can get the clearances? And that was happening, but the government is stopping a lot of these processes right now because it was getting out of control and out of hand. And now the government say, yeah, even if you are a sub, the government agency must issue a DD 254, otherwise it will not be valid. In that case. Does that satisfy your answer, David? Okay, perfect. Perfect. Let's take maybe a 3 to 4 minutes pause in here. Or does anybody else have any question before we get into the contract financing? Yasmin, I don't see any more questions in there, so I assume it's okay to do the pause.
No, I don't see any either. Yeah, we can continue. Thank you.
Do we want to continue or do we want to pause?
No, you can continue.
Okay. Contract financing. So what is important about the contract financing? Okay. The first thing that you need to understand is the value versus the funding. Let's say that you bid on a 5-year contract and the contract is $1 million every year. So therefore, you have a value of a $5 million, but they only came over and they only fund you the first 6 months of the first year. So you have a value of a 1 million for the first year, 4 million as a backlog, and only $500,000 in funding. And you're going to see that when they give you the funding, they are also going to say that that the government is not responsible for any money that goes above and beyond the funded value. So therefore, if you are billing, let's say $100,000 every month, that funding get used as the money is being paid. Remember what I say, the 75% rule, okay? If you are funded by only $500,000, probably by the end of month 3rd or 4th, if you have used more than 75% of that $500,000 that they give you the funding, based on your billings, you need to request more money. That's the 75% rule. Second, understand that most of the time they're going to be asking you that you need to do what is called monthly billings. The government normally like to pay no more than monthly. So if you are having employees, let's say you are hiring your employees on the 1st, you may be saying, okay, I'm going to give you salaries, payable every 15 days. And you may say, okay, from the 1st to the 15th, and I pay you on the 25th of the month. Now, you're going to be making a payroll payment to your employees on the 25th. You have not even issued an invoice at that time. Because if the invoice is monthly and you went into the 1st, to the month, you cannot issue the bill for the previous month until the 1st or the 2nd of the next month. So the question is, how are you going to pay all that? Well, that's why you need contract financing in that mode. Okay, you can also ask, depending on how crushed you are in terms of cash flow, to what is called the Prompt Payment Act, which is in the FAR, is one of the Federal Acquisitions Regulations, okay, and that is listed, okay, in your item. It's called the Prompt Payment Act, in the FAR 32.9, in which if you request the Prompt Payment Act, then you will be able to bill the government every 15 days rather than on a monthly basis. So you can get the money faster to your fund. Okay. In addition to this, even every 15 days, the government used to take between 15 to 30 days to pay. So even though that you may bill at the day 16, you still may not get that money pay off to you until 30 days later. Okay. The good news is that lately the government has been paying way much faster. It used to be that they pay 30 days up to 35 days. Now I've seen payments sometimes even 10 days after you issue the invoice if everything is correct and you are crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's in that case. So what you may need to do, most people get approached by a multitude of companies doing what is called factoring. Factoring is when you sell your accounts receivable to a separate company and they give you money for it. Usually they give you an advance ratio of 80%, but there is a problem when you do the factoring. You are no longer responsible for that invoice because you sold it as a document, okay, to a finance company. The government do not like you to selling your receivables because if they rejected it, you can say, I don't care. I already collected my money from the factoring company. Therefore, it is that factoring company's problem, not mine. And that's why they don't like you to do factoring. Those are the main cons, regardless of what the factoring company telling you, because normally it's, oh, we do it all the time. This is okay, not a problem. And they give you all this blah, 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 blah. I recommend it not to do it. So the best issue that you have is get a good line of credit. And you can usually get a good line of credit with a very good bank and a bank that understands government contracting. Not all the banks understand government contracting. I can tell you, if you go to one of those big banks, okay, most of them do not understand it. They're going to be asking you for a lot of collaterals, a lot of things. But when you go to a bank that live and breathe government contracting, they know and understand you. What is the main problem of the line of credit? It takes time for them to analyze it and approve it in that case. So do it in line with you submitting your RFP, because it's going to take 60 to 90 days to obtain a good line of credit with a good bank. Now, manufacturing companies are going to say, oh, we are better than the line of credit. Now, don't fall for that. Line of credit tell you, we only take 3% of your 3% of your invoice. And the line of credit is asking you for a prime plus 3, which is like 8% the interest. But you know what the difference is that interest in a line of credit from a bank at 8% is 8% a year. 3% on your invoices when you are factoring is 3% per month. Multiply that now by 12, and you are actually borrowing money at the 36% rate. And if you remember, interest and items like that are unallowable. And if you put a 10% profit fee and you are borrowing at the 36%, you are going to be losing by the way in the 26% a year. That's the main reasons why I normally do not recommend factoring. However, I can tell you, if you need to do payroll tomorrow and you don't have the money, only a factoring company can give you the money for the payroll that you may need. And that's where they lie, that's where the issue that the factoring company lies the most, which is in your financial disorganization that you may have in there. Because when we are small, we have to wear multiple hats. And at that time, people, you may say, oh, I forgot that I need to make payroll on this day, and I do not know how much I need to make, and I may or may not have the money. So either the factoring or the line of credit, whether it's a bank or a financer, they may ask you for what is called an assignability of claims, which is also part of the federal acquisition regulation. Is a clause negotiated in there, okay? And the assignment of claims is part of the FAR 32.85, must be approved and signed by the contracting officer, but the contracting officer cannot say no to an assignability of claims. An assignability of claim means that the bank may be lending you the money with the agreement that the money will be paid directly to the bank, and the difference then on what they lend you and what they have is going over then to you. Very common, very simple terms, okay, not that difficult to deal with. Okay, just to let you know. In that case. Now, your accounting system, which is part of how you're going to be tracking the cost and value, is also part of you're going to be making sure that you are making money. Your accounting system, which is an accounting system, is not a QuickBooks, is not a Unanet, is not a Delta, is not a Javis, it is a James. It is what you develop as the policies and procedures as part of your accounting system for your company. So you must have a dedicated accounting manual that, number one, the government wants to make sure that you are following this on an accrual basis. Therefore, GAAP, generally accounting accepted principles, are the rule of the law to follow in there. In your accounting system, you need to make a differentiation between your direct and your indirect cost rates. A direct cost is a cost that is allocable to only one cost objective. An indirect rate is allocable to more than one cost object. The typical indirect rates that you probably, some of you may know or have heard about it, is organized based on pools. The fringe benefit pools, that is where you put all your fringe benefit costs, your overhead costs, your general and administrative costs. And I also wanted to mention to everybody that while in the commercial sector, overhead and general administrative costs are used interchangeably. In the government contracting world, especially the federal government contracting world, they are not. An overhead cost is a cost that you will have because of the existence of a contract. If you do not have that contract, you will not have that overhead cost. A G&A, or general administrative cost, is the cost that you need to have to keep your company in business, contract or not contract. That is the main difference. Now, once you read your FAR 31, 31.2, that, as I mentioned before, is part of the federal acquisition regulations, you're going to find out that there are certain items that the government will reimburse you for your direct and indirect, but certain items that are actual costs that the government knows you're going to have are going to be considered unallowable costs, i.e. that they are not going to reimburse you for those. Pretty good example. If you go over to a dinner, or if you're traveling and you buy a beer to drink with your best, for your dinner, the government may not reimburse you for that beer unless you may want to choose the claim of that beer under your per diem expenses, which then you do not need to list it. Interest that you pay are also considered unallowable. Advertising costs is also considered unallowable, and several other more. Okay, and then you also have your profit, that is your profit fee that you negotiate, okay, at the bottom. Many people say, why do I need to charge this cost in such a complicated way? Because the government wants to level the playing field, and when they say, we give this contract to company X because they have a better cost on tracking values, they need to make sure that you understand that. Now, you can choose to manage your costs in any way you want to. The government have the chances to say, we accepted it, we do not accept it. The government cannot tell you how to do your accounting costs. They only ask you to be consistent. So whatever you apply to contract A, you also must apply it to contract B, C, D, E, all the way to all the other contracts. That is extremely important. And that's why they may also audit you to make sure that this is also correct in that. That's why it's important. You're also going to see in some of your, especially the certifications of the reps and certs, something called CAS or cost accounting standard. That is cost accounting standard is in the FAR, and it's usually FAR 32. That applies only to companies that are much larger, usually that have $50 million in revenue or above. In some cases, this is slightly below, depending on the night scope that you are operating. But as long as you're treated as a small business, the FAR 31 is the one that it will rule your company cost accounting issues in there, and you need to live and breathe those. Now, we were also talking and discussing something called the what happened in the time and material contract. There are certain clauses under the 52 that is called the TINA clause, or the Truth in Negotiation Act. The Truth in Negotiation Act implies that you are making a representation to the government about what is your fringe as a percentage of your direct labor cost, how much is your overhead as a percentage of direct plus your fringe cost, and how much is your G&A and your profit. They have the right to audit you and see if that is correct. And that's what you're going to be subject to, the Truth of Cost of Pricing data, also known as the Truth in Negotiation Act. Now, you may bid the contract, let's say, with a fringe rate of, let's say, 25%, and you may end up at the 24%. Don't worry, that difference of 1% is not going to cause a problem for you. Okay, the problem comes over, and I'm going to tell you an actual case, okay, of one client a long time ago, who created such a policies and manuals and issues that he was saying, okay, we are providing all these great benefits to all these people, and they are, but they are not available for them to enjoy these benefits until they've been with the company for at least 90 days, which is on average 3 months, correct? Well, these people were actually located in Iraq and Afghanistan, and because they were working very hard in there, more than they were working on average 80 to 90 hours a week, they were entitled to what is called the 90 days R&R, rest and relaxation. And he issued a policy within his company that says, well, if you decide to take the R&R, you are technically speaking resigning from the contract. And if you want to come back, you will start at zero again. Of course, everybody was taking the R&R, but technically speaking, these people were never receiving the benefits, because at the time that the clock is supposed to hit 90 days, they were getting into the R&R, in which they were fired from the company, and if they decided to join after the 30 days, okay, the clock started at zero again. And I told them, I don't want you as a client, because you are stealing from the government. You tell them you told them that you're going to be providing these benefits, but the way that you develop this policy, they will never be receiving these benefits. And that is a problem. And if I become your client, I have the duty to report you to the what is called the 800 line on the DCAA, because that is a stealing. That is legally stealing from the government. Okay, and you do not want to be involved in it. So that is why your accounting system must track the value, because everybody's subject to audit and everybody can have that. And that's why the kind of an issues that you do not want to be involved with. So can the government force me into a cost that was not included in the original contract? No. The answer is no. Contract claims and who approve them, the contracting officer, and you can battle those issues, okay? And especially, when it comes over at contract closeout. Contract closeout is a very easy process. It's not a lot of paper pushing where they're going to be asking you for the final invoices and the final claims, and that you agree that if you are the prime or if you are the sub, then the prime will send you a lot of paperwork that you may need to say there is no longer any additional obligation with your contractors. And then you have to create what is called a releases of claims. A lot of times this item must be notarized to acknowledged by the individual issuing that. Okay, assigning that they acknowledge that there are no more claims, and the government wants to see it in that way. Okay, and that's what I say. It's a lot of paper pushing all those at that moment. So, going to this, we are coming almost to an end, in which I call this, hey, give me the bad news, because there's a lot of issues, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The advantage of a good management and a good organization is that the government wants to do business with companies that maintain a good management and a good organization, and that they understand all of the above, and you understand. The government do not want you to lose money. No, the government wants to make sure that you make money so you can continue doing money. That's why you see that when you are a good government contractor, the government, if you are good and they decide that they're good, they like to keep repeating doing business with you all the time. Okay, so everything that you see in here, use it to your advantages. Don't fight the issues, join them and do it. I see many people say, well, let me tell you, I'm going to protest here. Yeah, but it's going to cost you a lot of money and you're going to go. And the question that many people have, can I be audited by the government? The answer is always yes. And because of that, you are better off making sure that you keep everything in compliance, that there is no problems, and if the government come over, it's just a checkpoint, and this auditor is in and out as fast as possible. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the class, and we are going to go over now related to some of the questions. I only see one in here, Dr. Himidi Pointer is asking, is it the government that does the net 90, or is it the prime? It's usually the prime. Okay. There is a term that the government actually like to see that the prime provides to its sub that is called the pay when paid, because of that clawback that they may say that they need to give you to make sure that if they reject your invoices or any issues, that you will have the way to claw back to your subcontractors if they are in there. However, the government never pays in 90 days. Even when there is a problem, I have seen the government solve all the issues with the prime, etc., within 30, no more than 40 days. However, many prime, especially the big ones, like to do what I call financial strangling, in which they choke you to death and they say, no, we're going to pay you in 90 days. Even though that they may say paid in 45 days, they extend your payment up to 90 days. Why they do that? Because they love to play with your money. There is no other reasons other than that. And that's usually what it happens. Okay, so, but it's all sometimes that you have to negotiate, negotiate, and negotiate. Okay, in that case. Yep. Wow. For a startup or a new company to the government contractor space, do you advise working with ADP or other companies to outsource the number of the requires to ensure compliance? Are there other type of outsourcing opportunities you recommend to help a small business comply with other than payroll or HR functions? Well, first of all, the ADPs of this world are very, very good in processing your payroll and making sure that you are paying the taxes correctly. Okay. What they are not good of is in compliance, because that's the best office. ADP bombard us in here all the time. Oh, we can do these things. We can offer you these HR functions, etc. And I always say no, 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 because, for example, based on what you saw in the and in this class, because payroll is so important to you, is the life and brain of your organization and how you manage and you do it. It's not a cookie cutter. Many companies say, oh, just get a PEO, a professional employer organization. Let me tell you, if your contract requires clearances, a PEO is going to be a disaster for you, because in order for the clearances to be assessed to your company, they must be your employee. And in the PEO, they are an employee of the PEO. So the PEO, in some cases, may be seen as a subcontractor to you. There are some agencies that have agreed, okay, no, it's not really a subcontractor, so they kind of give an eye, but it's about the individual within that agency. So yes, you can actually use the ADPs of this world, okay, to process that. Be very careful, because not all payroll companies are responsible for the disaster that they can make. And I have seen several, including from ADP, but some of them have the advantages that they are responsible if they create the problem. ADP is one of those so far, I can tell you. Not everybody else, it is like that. And I don't want to badmouth on the other company, okay, in a public environment like this, but yes. But in my space, I only use ADP for processing payroll, not for anything else that they can try to offer or sell you in that case. Does that help you, David? Depending on what you're looking for. Okay, as part of the outsourcing, there are many companies out there that outsource. You can outsource your accounting, okay, and they help you to keep that in track. You can outsource also your HR, your contract compliances. We offer that kind of services, okay, but we are not trying to use this as a way to sell ourselves, okay? But yes, Jasmine is, doing, that in there, okay? In there, and you can also ask, any PITA, okay, for any levels. Right now, there are like 5, 6, 7 different companies that do this job. Okay, but, I don't think it's ethical, okay, to offer an outsourcing recommendation here at this level. But if you want to give me a call directly, okay, then we can discuss that. Okay?
Thank you, Gregory. It seems like that's all the questions. I don't see any other questions. So I'd like to thank Gregory for this very thorough, excellent presentation. As always, he always gives such an excellent delivery and explanation that I love bringing him back on. It's almost like an intensive workshop, so we really appreciate it. And did you have one more slide, Gregory?
Yeah, it's just about me.
Okay, go ahead then. Let's hear about you.
It's about me, okay, my experience. I'm the founder of GL Solutions. I started this company in 2009. Okay, we specialize in management, financial, and information technology consulting firms supporting federal, state, and local governments. Okay, as well, we are also government contractors also ourselves. Okay, in some areas of accounting, financial management, program, project planning, and control. I personally have more than 30 years of experience in federal government contracting. I have been CFO at the C-level, CEO, CFO, COO of about half a dozen of government contractors. What I sell and what I provide is my experience in dealing with this. Okay? It's up to you guys and then to others to determine if this was the best or what it was your expectation in that case. In the PDF you're going to be receiving, there is also a page that have the information about my company and email, how to get me, and my telephone number also listed in there if you need to, if you would like to talk to me. Okay?
You and Gregory will be coming back towards the end of the year in November to teach another class, which is also excellent, called Understanding and Managing Payroll for Government Contractors. So I encourage you to sign up now. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I will send the copy of the recording out to you and the slides probably in the next 30 minutes. So I appreciate all of you. Again, as Gregory has emphasized so much, don't forget your Apex Accelerator counselor is here to help you as well. So, stay in touch. And we look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Thanks, Gregory. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.